Hello my lovelies, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to be talking about how I get my foundation to look flawless. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Kai. I'm a hairstylist and a makeup artist. I do live makeup videos over on Facebook. I also do different product reviews and tutorials here on YouTube, and you can check me out over on Instagram at stylesby_Kyle. If you like videos like these, be sure to hit that subscribe button below and also click that bell for notifications. Your foundation is the foundation of your makeup, so it really sets the tone for the rest of your face. So we want to make sure that we're starting out with that flawless base when we do our makeup. Now, this doesn't have to be your everyday routine. This is going to be something that, like, you take a couple extra steps, do all the different primers and things to get that really flawless finish. So this is going to be great for days that you're going to be taking photos, you're going out on a date, you're going to party, whatever, those days that you really want your face to look flawless. The first thing we want to make sure we're doing when it comes to creating a flawless base for our makeup, we want to make sure that we have a skincare routine that works for your skin. It's going to be a personal journey, but definitely getting yourself on a good skincare routine and using products that are going to target your skincare problems. As part of that routine, you want to make sure that you're moisturizing. It doesn't matter if your skin is dry, normal, oily, whatever, you need to make sure that you're moisturizing. A lot of people that have naturally oily skin will skip moisturizer because they think that their skin is already too greasy and that they don't need to put moisturizer on it, but really it's quite the opposite. If your skin is oily or if it's overproducing oil, typically it's telling you that it needs hydration. If you have oily skin, you do want to use a moisturizer that is not oil-based. Something that is water-based is going to work better for you. If you have extremely dry skin, then you may need something that is oil-based. So again, finding a product that works well for your skin type, but always, always, always moisturize. I have already done my skincare routine and moisturized today, so my next step would be primer. Primers are a really great way to combat the problems with your skin. So for me, my concerns are anti-aging. I'm starting to get those little fine lines around our eyes that we all dread as we start to age. And then the texture of my skin. I tend to have larger pores in some areas, so I really like to even those areas out. So priming is a step that I can address those concerns as well as in my skincare routine. I'm going to use some of the Believe Beauty Stay Put Primer. So this is not super expensive. Believe Beauty line is available exclusively at Dollar General, and everything in their line is under $5. So you don't have to spend tons of money on these products. There are inexpensive products that work really well. So I'm going to put this one all over my face. This is just a Stay Put primer. It is a gripping primer. It's going to help my makeup last throughout the day. And that's what most people think of primers as being, is something to make your makeup last. But now they have primers that address so many issues, whether it's hydration, whether it's pore refining, whether it's anti-aging, whatever. So finding good primers that are going to address your skin problems is going to be one of the first key steps in getting a flawless foundation. So now that I have that primer all over my face, I'm then going to come in with some of the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. This one is meant for refining pores. So I'm going to put this just into the areas that I have larger pores, and I'm really going to press this one into the skin because it does have a silicone or dimethicone base in it, which is actually helping to fill those little pores. And I'm just really patting that in and pressing it into those areas that I know that I suffer from those larger pores. So for me, that's around my nose area, through my cheeks, and through my forehead a little bit. And one of the other things that you want to make sure that you're doing is that you're allowing your products to set and dry in between applications. So I started with that first primer all over my face. I allowed that to kind of seep in and set in place before I came in with my next primer. Sometimes if you try to mix two primers together, they'll have an adverse reaction or they just won't wear well together. So if you allow them to dry in between each step, it's just going to wear better throughout the day. I always like to start very lightly with my products. You can always add on more if you need to, but it's gonna be really hard to take it off if you put on too much. And I'm also going to address my under eye area. So for that, I absolutely love this primer. This is the Becca Anti-Fatigue Under Eye Primer. As you can see, I have used almost all of it. but it's one of my favorites. And this is going to help with puffiness underneath of the eye, and then it's also going to help with those little fine lines underneath the eye. So I just take my ring finger, I warm up a little bit of that product onto my finger, and then I just pat that underneath of the eye. And again, just like with the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer, we want to make sure that we're pressing this into the skin, because it's going to help to kind of fill those little fine lines so that when we apply our concealer, it's all going to wear very nicely. And primers are also going to act as a barrier between your skin and your makeup. Makeup does have all kinds of chemicals and stuff in it, and so it's good to have something in between the skin and the makeup that we put on our face. Okay, so now that we are thoroughly primed and everything has set down and dried into place, now we're ready for our foundation. So another key in getting this flawless foundation is finding a foundation that works with your skin type and your skin tone. A lot of the times people struggle with finding the right undertone of their skin or finding a good match foundation. You don't want it to be obvious that you're wearing foundation. The ultimate goal is to make your foundation look like skin. So we want to have the color as close of a match as possible. You don't want it darker, you don't want it lighter, you want it to be the exact match for you. You can go into any beauty store, beauty counter, typically somebody there will help you match your foundation if you are not comfortable doing it yourself. There are also tons of resources online that will tell you how to choose the right undertone for your skin and assist you in helping find the right foundation. So definitely making sure we're finding a good match. Second, making sure it works with your skin type. So if you have oily skin, you want to use an oil-free foundation. We don't need to add any more oils into our routine because our skin already produces enough of it. So finding something that's oil-free. Also, if you like something more full coverage or more of a medium coverage or a sheer coverage, that's going to be preference. So finding something that has the right amount of coverage for what you're looking for. For me personally today, I'm going to be using the NARS Natural Radiant Long Wear Foundation. And this one is in the shade M1.5 Valaris. And I like this foundation because it has a little bit of that skin-like finish to it. It's not completely matte, but it's not super dewy either. It falls somewhere right in between. So I think once it's applied, it looks very natural on the skin. I'm going to start out with a couple pumps of this. I usually put this onto the back of my hand here. We'll just do 2 pumps to start with, and I like to pick it up on my finger and kind of place it onto my face before I blend it out with a brush, because a brush tends to soak up a lot of the product. And so if I just take and I dip my brush directly into that blob of foundation on my hand, chances are it's going to soak up about half of that, and I'm not going to end up with it like that foundation on my face, so it wastes a lot of product. So I just like to pick it up on my finger, and I can place this into the areas where I need the most coverage. Typically you want to apply it in the center of your face going outward, because you're going to get this really nice blend and you're going to get most of the coverage in the center of your face. So this is the area right here that I need most of my coverage. So I'll typically come in with my foundation. I'll do a dot on the bridge of my nose, a dot in the middle of my forehead. I'll usually do a couple dots on the cheek there. I'll do a dot on my chin, and then I'll come in over here along the jawline area and do a couple of dots there. Now, I don't have very much foundation left on my hand, and I need a little bit more to go down my neck. You want to make sure that you always bring your foundation fully down your neck. I just put a few dots of that on my neck. I'm going to do one underneath my chin there, and then I'm just going to bring a little bit of what's left around the edge of my forehead there and right over top of my lip, just to make sure that I get some coverage there. To blend this out, I'm going to use this brush. This is a Real Techniques brush. It's the 001 brush from, I'm not sure the name of the collection, but it has a densely packed flat top. I like this kind of brush for foundation because I like to stipple on my foundation. I don't like buffing my foundation because I feel like it just moves it around, and when I stipple, I feel like it's pressing it into the skin and helping it to set better and wear better throughout the day. Before I apply my brush to my face, I am going to pick up the little bit of foundation that's left on the back of my hand with those bristles, and that way they have a little bit of a coating of the foundation on them already, so it's not going to pick up everything on my face. I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to blend this outward, and just using little stippling motions again to press that foundation into the skin. I feel like that's what really helps to give it the most natural finish is pressing it into the skin like that so that it's melding into those primers instead of sitting on top of them. And this is probably the longest part of doing your foundation, or the most time consuming part, at least for me, is blending it out, because you want to make sure that you get this really nice even coating everywhere. You don't have any patchy spots, you don't have any brush strokes. You just want to make sure that everything looks really nice and even, and you want that foundation to be undetectable. Make sure that you're blending it back into your hairline, around the edges. I always take a little bit of foundation over top of my ear so that it doesn't look very red next to the rest of my face. And then once the face is looking pretty well blended, we'll bring this down the neck and blend that out as well. Okay, so now I have that first application of foundation blended out. You can see it's given me this really nice evened out coverage. I didn't take this too close into my eye area because I know that I am going to use concealer through that area. So instead of building up a bunch of product and putting foundation and then putting concealer and all that stuff, I don't need to bring that foundation all the way up underneath of my eye. That concealer is going to do enough by itself to cover that area. I do have a few areas where I feel like a little bit of my redness is still peeking through, so I'm going to layer up my foundation a little bit. You can build up your foundation. It's better to layer it up in thin layers than try to put one thick layer on all at one time, because if you do that, it's not going to set correctly. So for me, I'm going to do one more pump. I'm going to go right on my nose again, because I always have a little bit of redness that shows through right there. And then I'm also going to come right here on my neck because I have these little dots from shaving earlier. I nicked myself a little bit and it's a little red right there. So we're going to cover that up as well. And then I'm also going to do one more dot right here on my cheek area just to get rid of any of that redness. Again, I'm going to pick up the excess on the back of my brush here. And then we're going to just stipple that out. And you can see that that's building up the coverage just a little bit. And again, just blending that out towards the edge of the face. That's really going to give you the most natural finish because it's going to taper that foundation off as it moves towards the outside of your face. Okay, so now we have a pretty good base of foundation going on. It doesn't look like I'm wearing tons of makeup, but it's giving me good coverage. Everything looks nice and even, and it's well blended out. Looks really good. So the next thing we want to do is we want to come in and put on some concealer. So I always do my foundation before I do my concealer, because once I've put on my foundation, then I can see the areas that I really still need some coverage. So I know I need to do my eye area. And I usually just do a couple little like diagonal swipes. When you're trying to make your foundation look really natural, less is usually more, and again, thin layers and we can build it up. So I like to start out with just a little swipe there, one in the middle and one on the outer corner. And usually when I blend that out, that's gonna give me enough coverage. If I need more, I can always come back in and put it on. And to blend that out, I'll be using this brush, the BH Cosmetics Weekend Vibes number 4 brush. And again, we're going to work in stippling motions underneath the eye there. And just kind of patting that into the skin and blending that into our foundation. When I first blend it, I stay really concentrated right underneath of the eye. And then once I kind of have it blended out like that, I'll then kind of pat it down a little bit towards the cheek area, just to blend those together so there's not a harsh line or noticeable line between where my concealer and foundation sit. So now you can see that's giving us this really nice brightness underneath of the eye. It looks very smooth. Again, it doesn't look like I have tons of foundation on. Oh, and I forgot to say, for concealer today, I'm using the Kylie Jenner Skin Concealer, and this one is in the shade Hickory. I really like this concealer. I just started using it recently, but it has, again, a very like skin-like finish without being too dewy, too matte. It just has that little bit of radiance to it, so it still looks like your skin. and it blends out really beautifully, and it's very lightweight. It doesn't feel like you're wearing a lot of product, but it gives really good coverage. Okay, so then the other places that I typically like to or need to conceal is again through my nose area, because we talked about earlier, I tend to show a lot of like my discoloration and redness in my nose area. So I always do just a little bit right down the bridge of the nose there, and right on the tip of the nose. This is also helping to highlight a little bit. So I always use a concealer that's about 1 to 2 shades lighter than my foundation color, because it's going to help to highlight and lift those areas that we're concealing. So underneath the eye, I always like that to look a little bit more bright and lifted, and helps to like pull it forward. Again, I'm just using little stippling motions, and I'm using the very end of this brush because I really want to concentrate this down the bridge of the nose and on the tip of the nose. So not moving it around a whole lot, just blending it out. And then I usually will also use this to highlight right above my lip and on my chin. And again, that's just going to bring all of the focus kind of into those areas, and making sure that we have that nice flawless finish through the center of our face. I also have this little spot above my eyebrow here. I was plucking my eyebrows and made myself bleed the other day. So I'm just going to touch a little dot of that right there. And again, I'm just going to stipple over that with the end of the brush. This is very important when you're trying to cover spots using that stippling motion, because it's going to pack the pigment on top of that spot instead of moving it around like it would when you swirl it out. So now that we have concealed and put our foundation on, I always like to set mine down with some powder. I do have combination skin, so I tend to get a little bit oily around my nose throughout the day, and also in my cheek area, and a little bit through my forehead. That typical T-zone area is where I tend to get oily. You do not have to powder your entire face. You can spot powder. You do not have to bake your face. You can just lightly set it with powder. Again, a lot of this is going to be determined by your skin type. If you have super oily skin that's like oily all over, then yes, powder your face all over, because it is going to help to absorb the oils throughout the day. If you have a T-zone that's oily, powder through your T-zone. I do recommend powdering underneath of your eyes for concealer, unless you have like a really dry under eye, but it just helps to keep that from creasing throughout the day. One thing I do want to do before I start to powder, because I know I am going to put a little bit of powder underneath of my eyes, is I want to make sure that those are nice and smooth before I set it down with powder. If there are creases there before you powder, you will have those creases for the rest of the day. So come in with your brush. If you like, you can also use a beauty blender for this, and you can use these same principles with a beauty blender that we did with our face today as well. You don't have to use brushes. If blenders are your preference, then go ahead. I just really like the finish with a brush. I think it gives a really beautiful, natural looking finish. Okay, so that's nice and smooth. So now we want to come in and set it down with some powder. I'm just going to use a large powder brush. This one is a Ulta Beauty Times Harry Potter collection brush. It is the cloak brush from that collection, just large fluffy powder brush. And I'm going to use some of the Morphe Bake and Set setting powder. And this is in the shade Translucent. Their translucent powder does have a little bit of a tint to it, which helps prevent flashback in photos, or prevent that white cast that like a truly white translucent powder can leave. I'm just going to pick a little bit of that up into the end of the bristles of the brush, and I'm going to tap it off. You don't need a lot of powder on here, just enough to set that makeup down. So now I'm going to come in underneath of my eye, and I'm just going to tap that powder onto the skin. And again, using that stippling motion is going to press that powder into the makeup and help it set into place. So it's not just kind of sitting on top of the makeup, it's actually kind of melding into your foundation. You can also use a smaller brush for this if you aren't comfortable using the large powder brush around your eye. For me, I know that I'm going to come in and powder my cheek area as well, so I don't mind if a little bit of that powder falls down. If your face is drier and you don't want to powder your cheek area, use a smaller brush. Even like a eyeshadow fluffy blending brush, something like this would be great for setting down your under eye with powder. Okay, so now that I've done underneath of my eyes, I'm also going to come in and do along the bridge of my nose. and then along the sides of my nose and my cheek area. And again, using those same stippling motions to pat that powder into place. I'm gonna do through the center of my forehead, because again, we're getting all those T-zone areas. And then I also like to powder around my mouth because my makeup tends to break up and get oily around those areas. If I get sweaty, my upper lip will sweat and get oily. We also eat around those areas, so grease from food or whatever will break up your makeup. Just tapping that into place. Okay, so I do have a little bit of excess powder now because we did use those stippling motions to set that powder down. So now I want to come in with my brush. I'm not going to pick up any more powder, and I'm just going to start to swirl out that powder that we put on our face. This is going to take away any of the excess, and then it's also going to help to move that excess powder over the other areas of our face. So even though we're not thoroughly setting them with powder, they are getting a little light dusting of that powder that's going to help to set your makeup down. Okay, and then the final step for a flawless foundation or flawless base for your makeup is a setting spray. I'm going to be using the Morphe Continuous Setting Mist for this today. I like using a setting spray after powder because it kind of helps to melt that powder down a little bit and make it kind of all meld together so it doesn't look like I have a layer of powder sitting on top of my face. And we just let that dry down. That is pretty much it for our flawless foundation application, you guys. It's really mostly about skin prep, priming, and then working in thin layers, and then just making sure that everything is thoroughly blended and pressed into the skin. Again, we want it to look like skin and not like we have a bunch of makeup on our face. So the more natural your foundation looks on your face, the more flawless it's going to look. We want to have that really soft, airbrushed, almost undetectable as makeup kind of look going on, and I think that we achieved that today with this look. Hopefully y'all learned a thing or two from today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed creating it for you. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, make sure that you do that so that you can get notified when I post new content. Also, make sure that you click that bell for notifications. You can also go check me out over on Facebook under the name Kai Styles and over on Instagram at stylesby_Kyle. I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and until I see you next time, remember to be true to yourselves, be kind to one another, and most importantly, be beautiful. I gotta go put these brows on. I will see you all later.